Fasting Feasting, Chapter 3. Uma, pass your father the fruit. Uma picks up the fruit bowl with both hands and put it down with the thumb before her father. Bananas, oranges, apples, there they are for him. Blinking, he ignores them. Folding his hand on the table, he gazes over them with the sphinx-like expression of the blind. Mama knows what's wrong. She taps Uma on the elbow. Orange, she instructs her. Uma can no longer pretend to be ignorant of Papa's need, Papa's ways. After all, she has been serving them for some 20 years. She picks out the largest orange in the bowl and hands it to Mama, who peels in strips, then divides it into separate segments. Each segment is then peeled and freed of pips, and thirsted only the perfect globals of juice are left, and then passed one by one to the edge of Papa's plate. One by one, he lifts them with the tips of his finger and places them in his mouth. Everyone waits while he repeats the gesture, over and over. Mama's lips are pursed with the care she gives her actions and their importance. When she has done, and only peel and pips lie on her plate, and nothing at all on Papa except for the merest smear of juice, she glances over at Uma. Her dark eyes flash with brightness of her achievement and pride. "Where is the Papa finger bowl?" she asks loudly. The finger bowl is placed before Papa. He dips his fingertips in and wipes them on the napkin. He is the only one in the family who is given a napkin and a finger bowl. They are emblems of his status. Mama sits back. The ceremony is over. She has performed it. Everyone is satisfied. It was the time of day when the cook had closed up his kitchen and gone off to his quarters behind the guava trees to stretch out on his street bed and sleep till tea time. Mama and the baby were both silent in the dark, shuttered bedroom, and the girls left to themselves under the revolving fan, on the stripped-down beds of the room they shared, for the time being, with Mama elderly Colson, who was still around to help. The elderly Colson was beyond the need for sleep. She thought it an indulgence of the young, and coaxed the girl into playing a game of cards. They sat cross-legged on the bed, slapping down the cards in a desultory way, now and then letting out an exclamation of disgust or triumph, and leaning towards to gather up their gains. Uma muttered, "I'm going to get a drink of water. I will come back," and slip out of the door. Aruna watched her sharply because she had been that Uma's mind was not on the card, but Uma was prepared for the afternoon. In spite of the distress that had made her throat dry and her hands shake, she had planned carefully. Now she went quietly to the corner of the pantry where behind a tall stack of dinner plates she had hidden her purse containing all the money she had, in a tight roll. Soundlessly, she slipped into the sandals she had left behind the water jar on the veranda outside the kitchen, dropped down off of the parapet and darted into the shade of the guava trees. She knew all the rooms in the house had their curtains drawn against the midday sun. All the verandas there read mats unrolled and hanging down into the dull yellow air. She counted on the servants' family, scattered about the compound, being heavily asleep. True, a call was calling in the neem tree, piercingly, questioningly, over and over again, but its voice was the voice of summer itself, noticeable when it first arrived, along with the blaze and with the lethargy of the season, and then just a part of the background, a thread in this worn, faded fabric. Keeping close to the edge, she held her head down and darted along. The Mali lived in a hut close to the gate, but he had strained himself so heavily with vines and bushing and hedges, he hardly even noticed the comings and goings along the drive unless specifically asked to do so. As she hoped, he was lying on his string caught by his hibiscus bush, where the tap dripped pleasantly into a pool of mud whereby he kept himself cool. He was asleep with his mouth open, his breath coming and going in a toneless sun. Uma was uncharacteristically quiet this afternoon, making her sandals shuffle through, not slap at the cradle. Then she went out of the gate with a sudden whisk and broke into a run, clutching her paws to her. A tiny yellow plastic one the elderly cousin had brought her as a present. She ran along the ridge of heaped earth and baggage between the road and the ditch. Uma was always unsteady on her feet, much as she loved the games played at school. She was inept at all of them, and the ridge was uneven, so she hobbled and stumbled in a way that would have made any passerby nervous to see. Only there was no passerby at that time of the day, not in their part of the town, which had little traffic at any time. She ran all the way to the crossing where she knew rickshaws waited for custom, and she was right. There were three down out in the shade of a large rain tree. Their drivers lay across the benches, asleep, legs hanging over the sides. But Uma made such a din, crying, "Take me to St. Mary's School! To St. Mary's School, quick!" that one of them sat up, adjusted his red and white checked turban, and with a twitch of his mouth indicated that she should get in. Then he panted and huffed so hugely as he pedaled down the road in the midday blaze that Uma feared he would collapse with head stroke. Then she will not get St. Mary's and Mother Agnes, and she will not. The rickshaw driver's lungs and legs pumped, and the dust flew up from the road into their faces and eyes, stinging. So, out of breath and cloaking dust, they arrived at St. Mary's. After paying him off, he loudly demanded more, then more still, and finally bullied her into handing over all she had. She stood at the gate and realized that it was the hour for nuns to rest as well as everyone else, and that Mother Agnes ought not to be disturbed. She had never dared disturb Mother Agnes before. Yet knowing that she still there was no alternative. Flying down the stone corridor, she ran past classrooms shut for the summer, up the stair to the non-private quarters where the schoolgirl never went, were not permitted. All the doors leading off the verandas here were shut as well. In addition, their glass panes were curtained. How was she to tell which was Mother's? The curtains were the same blue cotton at every door. Unlike the classroom doors, their panes were polished and the brass handles shone. There were pots of ferns beside them and doormats outside them, but no sign of anyone. Then Mother Agnes came around the corner and down the passage, walking in long, rustling strides toward her. Uma didn't know why she would be out at this time, what she might be doing. Severely, she could not have been looking for Uma, and yet was what she seemed to be doing. Her face emerging from her coif, her voice calling, "Child?" Uma hurled herself at Mother Agnes, threw her arm around her waist, hid her face in her scarlet white cotton skirts, and howled aloud. She was a messy weeper. Her face was wet, her hair distraught, her mouth was twisted, and her eyes and nose ran. She knocked her hands in Mother's skirts and gurgled. All the time she howled, "Mother, oh Mother," she wailed. And when Mother Agnes tried to pluck her off her skirt and hold her aside, she flung herself down at the nun's sandaled feet and lay on the floor, abjectly wailing. Uma, the nun, recognized her at last, and seemed quite resigned to dealing with yet another child who had failed her exams and come to plead for promotion. "Will you get up, please? Come into my room, please. There is no way, you know, child." And she bent and pulled Uma to her feet, then took her face and pressed it to her bosom. Uma, startled, breathed in the smell of antiseptic soap and started on a sweep of something else, something kind of sense, musky, religious, while Mother Agnes muttered a prayer. It sounded like a prayer into her hair. But when she heard why Uma had run to her, what Uma wished her to do, she tapped a brass paper knife on the edge of the desk, and her eyes became hooded while her face receded into her coif. She said, listening to Uma sob. "Yes, your father brought me. I know. He says that because you failed once again." Uma let another hold because he had forgotten about that failure, and only now she remembered. "But I will work very hard," she yelled. "I will pass next time. Please tell him, Mother, I will pass next time." The more she yelled, the more dubious Mother looked. When Uma grumbled about the baby, not knowing how to bat the baby, about being afraid to pin on his nappy, she began to grow impatient. "Girls have to learn these things too, you know," she said. Uma was thunderstruck. It was the last thing she ever expected Mother Agnes to say. Now Mother Agnes was talking about the Virgin Mary and baby Jesus, but surely she didn't think that Virgin Mary was a mother like Mama was a mother. Surely she didn't think baby Jesus ever lay squealing in his crib with his hair growing down his forehead and over his ear, with devil running out of the corner of his mouth like a sick cat, that he had to have his nappy changed and that they smell. Uma stared at Mother Agnes's dismay. It was what Mother was saying, and if she wound up by giving Uma a holy picture out of the drawer in his desk, a small gilded card with a waxily pink Jesus on a waxily white Virgin Mary's blue lap, and advising her to pray for strength, pray for the Virgin Mary for strength, never forget to pray. She was nevertheless dismissing her, not only for her present, her protection, but even from her school. She got her feet, drawing Uma up too. But as she held Uma by her shoulders, trying to convey her own belief and her strength to her, Uma suddenly one leaped and crumpled, and the next thing that Mother Agnes knew was that Uma was lying stretched out on the cotton rag by her desk. Nor had the simple fainted. She had written, frothing a little at the mouth, and moaning, banging her head to one side, then the other. When Mother Agnes tried to leave her, she began to roll so violently that Mother Agnes had to go to the door and call for help. Then the ignominy of her return. In the school van, accompanied by Sister Teresa and the school nurse, with Aruna wide-eyed and Mama scolding like a mad woman, blaming it all on the pink and blue and gilt picture that Mother Agnes had given Uma and that she still held clenched in her fist. The way Mama railed against it, it would seem the holy picture was a potion at some evil charm that had cast a spell on her daughter. See what these nuns do, she racked to Papa. What ideas they fill in the girl's head. I always say don't send them to a convent school. Keep them at home. I say, but who listen? And now, when Mama was calm again, she showed Uma how to pour a little oil on her fingertip and then massage into the baby's limbs. Massaging made him ticklish. He wriggled and wiggled under her fingers like a fish trying to escape, and after beating her lips in an attempt not to, Uma did burst out laughing at all. Mama turned away with a sign of relief. Clearly she felt all was well now. The baby could be left to his elder sister. But Aya can do this, Aya can do that. Amma tried to protest when the others began to come thick and fast. This made Mama look stern again. You know we can leave the baby the servant, she said severely. He needs proper attention. When Uma pointed out that Aya had looked after her and Aruna's baby, Mama's expression made it clear it was quite a different matter now, and she repeated threateningly, proper attention. Proper attention. It was with a steely determination that Mama turned this upon her son, as if making sure no one could accuse her of any lapse in his care or recall the reluctance with which she had borne him. Even when she turned him over to Yuma or the Aya to be bathed or dressed, she remained sharply vigilant on their performance. As for his meals, she watched over him like a dragon, determined that a fixed quantity of milk was poured down his gullet, whether he wanted or not, and later the prescribed boiled egg and meat broth. Then, when Papa returned from the office, he would demand to know how much his son had consumed, and an answer had to be given. It had to be precise, and it had to be one that pleased. For Arun's birth didn't mean that Mama Papa were finally separated into two entities. Mama Papa, not at all. Arun appeared to be the glue that held them together even more intrinsically. If Mama managed to have a little private life of her own, those gays of Rami, those secret battle lips, female talk with her daughter when the occasion arose, then, where sons reading and care, she will supply the answer. All her duties and responsibilities neatly accounted for like so many laundry sheets back from the wash. More than ever now, she was Papa's helpmeet, his consort. He had not only made her wife, he had made her the mother of his son. What honor, what status! Mama's chin lifted a little into the air. She looked around her to make sure everyone saw and noticed. She may have been wearing a medal. It was not that their lives changed in more than a few details, such as their shared concern for their son. No, their social life didn't miss a beat. Mama continued to deck herself in silks and jewelry and accompany Papa to the club, to dinner parties and weddings. After all, Uma and Aruna and Diaya were there to stand in for her at Arun's cot. It seemed to them that Mama sailed out with an added air of achievement. She had matched Papa's achievement, you could say, and they were now more equal than ever. Was this love? Uma wondered disgustedly. Was this romance? Then she sighed, knowing such concept had never occurred to Mama. She didn't read, and she didn't go to the cinema. When her friends or neighbors gossiped about a love marriage they had heard of, she lifted her upper lip a little bit to convey her scorn. Love marriage, indeed, she knew better. Uma also noticed how Mama and Papa looked upon Arun with an identical expression, a kind of nervous, questioning, somewhat doubtful but determined pride. He was their son, surely an object of pride. Surely. Then seeing this panicked creature who appeared to take forever to raise his head or get to his knee, finally to stand upon his leg, a kind of secret doubt would enter their eyes, even a panic, quietly suppressed, quietly brushed away. Mama developed a nervous fear on the subject of her own feeding. The exercise always left her spent, and after it she still had to face Papa's interrogation regarding its success or failure. Arun seemed to become infected by her nervousness, the tension surrounding the whole occasion. As soon as the boiled egg in a cup or the bowl of broth appeared, he clenched his teeth and turned away, pretending to be engrossed in a play from which no one could distract him. They took him in turns to try. Mama, Uma, and Yaya, to spoon mouthfuls into him when he was not looking. Occasionally they managed to catch him unawares so that he would swallow before he knew it, but mostly he averted his face at just the right moment or else spat out what they had for him. Mama was often in tears by the end of it, and Uma was enraged in temper, while Papa would say, "And have you seen your son? He's already playing cricket." It was years before they understood what Arun's tastes were, and accepted the fact that he would not touch the meat Papa insisted he should eat. Arun was a vegetarian. Papa was confounded. A meat diet had been one of the revolutionary changes brought about in his life and his brothers by their education. Raised amongst traditional vegetarians, their eyes had been opened to the benefits of meat along with that of cricket and the English language. The three were linked intrinsically in their minds. They had even succeeded in convincing the wife they married of his noble concept of progress, and passes it on to their children. Papa was always scornful of those of the relatives who came to visit and insisting on clinging to their cereal and vegetable eating ways, shying away from the meat dishes Papa insisted on having cooked for dinner. Now his own son, his one son, displayed this completely baffling desire to return to the ways of his forefathers, meek accompaniment who had got nowhere in life. Papa was deeply vexed. He prescribed cold liver oil. Mama and Uma were to spoon it down his throat. Somehow, holding his nose pinched between his fingers, Uma was to force it between his teeth. He did open his mouth, but snapped his teeth shut on her finger. Withdrawing it with a yell, she stared at the blood trickling down. "Did you see?" she gasped. "Did you see what he did?" "He remembered. You remember you with me once," she reminded him, holding a quarter of green guava just out of his reach. They were handing in a clump of bougainvilleas, she with the guava she had picked unripe and cut into quarters and eggs and sprinkled with salt for a treat. A strongly forbidden treat, suffering as he did from an endless procession of ill. He had already run through mumps, measles, chicken pox, bronchitis, malaria, flu, asthma, nosebleeds, and more. It was the last thing Aruna ought to have been given as a treat. fruit so unripe that it set teeth on edge and turned the gilded sword. Yet she was pushing the slice into his mouth on her own, weakly irresponsible. They closed their eyes and winced as they started to rasp the taste buds on the roots of their tongues. Even their ears creaked. The fruit was so sour. They blinked their eyes shut, and tears pricked the corners with salt. They opened them and laughed. See my fingers. See where you bit me. Uma waved it under his nose, not wanting him to forget because she had not forgotten. Arun narrowed his eye in a way that made Uma shift uncomfortable on her haunches. He ought not to have expected Arun to enjoy the joke. Shall I tell Mama Papa you gave me to eat? She retailed craftily. What will Mama Papa do if they know what you gave me to eat? Uma jumped up so quickly that her hair caught in the thorny bongalias and lifted off her head so that she seemed to be hanging by it. Arun screamed with laughter.